Hello, welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So yes, we're up to Nemesis now. So second set of the Mercadian Mask block. I would definitely, if you've not watched the Mercadian Mask episode, then definitely watch that because it, as with all sets, particularly with the small sets, it makes more sense when you take a look at the first set of the block, I think. So this was released February 2000. Wow. It had Spell Shapers, Alternative Costs, Laccolith, Seals, Rebels, Mercenaries. There was a keyword ability in the form of fading. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to see how that works out. It's a small set, if I haven't said already. 143 cards, 55 commons, 44 uncommons, 44 rares. As usual, no basic land artwork because the basic lands come from the large set at this point in Magic's history. So obviously I'm going to go through as I normally do, and you'll see how those various themes and mechanics spin out in various cycles, both vertical and horizontal and mega cycles and various other things. There was also a number of matching pairs and mirrored pairs in the set, which I don't know if that's a particular rabbit hole we've gone down in the past, but I'll take a look at that as well, I think, because there was just so many of them as I'm going back to looking at the cards as a whole. So here's the whole card sheet as the cards would have appeared in the boosters, and towards the end of the video I'll go back to this so we can pick out some of the cards that may not have been picked up as we go through the various cycles. But again, I'm just going to scroll through it now because it does reinforce this point I've made previously about the consistency of the artwork here. So stylistically, and we'll probably find as we get further in that will be something that will stay like that. Okay, so let's move on to our first set of cards. So if you remember from the previous set, from the large set from Mercadian Masks, there was a whole group of different subtypes of creatures, and Spell Shapers was one of them. And so it's no different in the small set. There are a number of Spell Shapers. Now within the Spell Shapers subtype, what you'll find is there are a number of various cycles at various rarities. It can get a little bit confusing with this, I've found, because it's not I would say that when we go through some of these cycles, you'll notice that some cards in some of the cycles don't mesh quite so well as the other cards, if that makes sense. But anyway, we'll go through Spell Shapers first. So common Spell Shapers: 1/1 creatures, 1 mana activation, Spell Shaper ability, discard a card, get an effect, sort of thing. So you can see here we've got Netta Endal, Trickster Mage in blue, so these are all at common, Plague Witch is the black one. Bowler Warrior is the red one. And Harvest Mage is the green one. And you can see with the templating on here, it's all single cost, tap, discard a card from your hand. Now, of course, each spell is different. And apparently, so these, as with the other ones, they represent another spell, their ability. So the Netter and Dull one, which is there, is basically has got Change of Heart stapled to it. Trickster Mage has Twiddle stapled to it, so tap or untap target artifact, creature or land. Plague Witch has Afflict there, -1/-1 until end of turn for a target creature. Bowler Warrior, Panic on it, target creature can't block this turn. And Harvest Mage, Pulse of Lanoir. Where is it? Until end of turn, if you tap a land for mana, it produces 1 mana of any colour instead of its normal type and amount. So there was a cycle of rare and uncommon spell shapers. So we've got Avenger Endal, and you can see again, so this has got a sort of mix between Exile and Swords to Plowshares. Then we've got Stronghold, where's it gone? Biologist. So you have to counter target spell, but then additionally, this is where I would say these cycles get a little bit wonky. There was a second one, and again, look, these are uncommon, which is Stronghold Machinist, and that had Negate on it. So with the Divining Witch, we're back to rare, and that has Demonic Consultation stuck on it. Archmage is also, oh, that's back to uncommon again. That has Arc Lightning on it. And then, where are we? Stampede Driver. So that's got Overrun on it, and that's an uncommon. Well, a weak Overrun, my notes have here. So yeah, very interesting. So just looking at the spell shape as a whole, you can see because of that there's slightly more in blue than the other colours. I think all the other colours have two. That's got an additional one. So fading. So you can see there's quite a number of fading cards and artifacts that either have fading or care about fading. Now I've got to do this so I can identify these, because within fading there is also a cycle of activated ability creatures which feature the removal of a fade counter. So you've got, where's it gone? Here we go. Yeah, got to get this right here. Defender in Vec, that has the remove fade counter on it, on the remove fade counter ability. And on this one it's Jolting Merfolk. Phyrexian Prowler is another fading card that also cares about fade counters. Ancient Hydra is the only fading card in red, but it is also one from the cycle. and then Wood Ripper. There's quite a lot of green fading creatures, but only one of them has the ability to remove a fade counter. I think, yeah, so one of each of the colours allows you to play around with the fading counters, or basically remove them. And again, all of these are uncommon, the ones that remove the fading counters, except for the white one, which is at common. So yeah, and then of course we've got other creatures here with, and enchantments, other cards with fading on them. So when it comes into play, just so you're clear how this works with fading, you put the number of counters indicated by the fading effect here. So this one, for example, has 4 fading counters on it. Beginning of your round, so remove a fade counter from it. If you can't, sacrifice it. So once you're down to 0, you don't have any fading counters. You sack it. And obviously, because of that, all of these are going to be permanents. They're going to be either creatures or artifacts or enchantments. In actual fact, if I just notice something here. Oh, yeah. So actually this also has an ability to remove fade counters. But yeah, this is a bit all over the place. So again, the cycles are a little bit wobbly here. Maybe it's just because that one's actually a rare. So that's also got the ability to remove fading counters. So, recruiters. So from the previous set, we're used to seeing rebel recruiters. So these are ones that will hunt down other cards of that particular subtype, so other rebels. So we had I'll go back to the other ones, but we had rebels and mercenaries from the previous set. Now, from what I remember, rebels were in white, mercenaries were in black. You'll notice there's also a number of mercenaries with, or a number of cards, sorry, which have this recruiter ability on them that aren't just in white and black or black. There's a red mercenary, there's a green rebel now, and then you'll also find there are, if we go, where is it? There, Sea Hunter. And there's one for Merfolk. There's one for goblins, which interestingly, it's a mercenary, but it doesn't search for mercenaries, it searches for goblins. And then there's one for elves, I believe. Where's it gone? Yeah, there we go. Sky Shroud Poacher. There's also a couple of other cards which, while they're not tribal recruiters, I think is the term they were using here actually. While they're not tribal recruiters, they will search down certain cards, and we'll come on to these in a moment because it's pretty important. What these do, but I think I revisit these at some point. But you can see they actually will hunt down copies of themselves. I think they called them calling creatures, but we'll come on to that once I bring this up again. There was what they call it, a vertical cycle of those, because they weren't in all the colours. So yeah, Cycle of seals. Well, this is a pretty consistent cycle. So you can see with the seals, common enchantments, they can be sacrificed to mimic the effect of a certain common instant. So this destroys artifacts or enchantments. Seal of cleansing, that is. Seal of removal bounces a creature. Seal of doom destroys a target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. Seal of fire deals 2 damage to target creature or player. And Seal of strength is a pump spell. So basically you play these, they sit on the battlefield, and you choose when you want to sack them and to get that particular effect. So in here there was a number of cards which had the word parallax on them. There was a sort of mini cycle in that it didn't have all of the colours, just was it white, blue, black. There's parallax wave. So each of these are global enchantments. They all have fading 5 on them, and the ability to exile a resource from the game until it itself leaves the game. Apparently parallax wave saw a lot of play as a 4 of in the counter rebel standard deck of the time. So parallax wave's the white one, parallax tide's the blue one, parallax nexus is a corresponding black one that has hold the same basic template on them. So the white one exiles creatures. Hang on. No, what am I saying? Yeah, sorry. Remove a target creature from the game. So yeah, that removes creatures. This one's land, and the parallax nexus is cards in hand. There are other parallax cards, but they don't share the same template. They have parallax in them, and that's it. This one interacts with interesting. Put a fade counter. So yeah, that can prolong stuff with fade counters on it. Okay. Oh yes. So there was quite a lot of alternate casting cost in this set. Well, it's quite a lot, but well, by certain standards. We saw it in the other set, and there's a couple of cycles. One at common, which is Lash Knife, Daze, Mind Swords, Downhill Charge, and Sky Shroud Cutter. And then there's also a cycle at uncommon, which is Angelic Favour, Ensnare, Dark Triumph, Mogalarm, and Reverent Silence. So the common ones can be cast with a non-mana cost if you control a basic land of the corresponding type. The alternate costs vary between colours. So there's slight variations in the cycle depending on which card we're talking about. Let me just use those as an example. So Lash Knife, if you control the planes, you may tap an untapped creature you control instead of paying Lash Knife's mana cost. Charted creature has first strike. Daze, you may return an island you control to its owner's hand instead of paying its mana cost. Mind Souls, you may sacrifice a creature. Instead, and Interesting. If you control the voice from me, play gain 5 life instead of paying Sky Shroud's Cutter's mana cost. So for the uncommons, Angelic Favour, it was tapping an untapped creature. Ensnare was bouncing islands back to your hand. Dark Triumph was sacking a creature. Mogalan was sacrificing mountains, and Reverent Silence having an opponent gain life. Oh, I said uncommon. Once again, the Reverent Silence is a common. Free spells. So if you control a land corresponding to the spell's colour and your opponent controls a land corresponding to the spell's enemy colour, you may play each of these spells without paying their mana cost. So Civi's Ruse, if you were to play it conventionally, is 2/2 white, Submerge is 4 and a blue, Massacre 2 and 2 black, Mog Salvage 2 and a red, and Refreshing Rain 3 and a green. And so you can see the first bit, template things are the same as I've said. It's if your opponent controls an enemy land for this particular colour, and or a specific enemy land, and you control a land of the colour. So that's in terms of the more straightforward of the cycles, if you can call them straightforward. As you've seen, they don't, they seem to break out from the usual consistency that we've seen in the past. That's the word I'm looking for. So I'm going to endeavour now to highlight the vertical cycles. So yeah, rebels were a thing, and I've just basically brought up all the rebel cards here. There was a vertical cycle. So what you tend to find with vertical cycles generally, and again they've gone off topic a little bit here, or off template, with some of the other ones I'm going to show you, but with these ones you had these where is it, you got Defiant Falcon, Defiant Vanguard, and the Defiant Hero Lin Civi, I think that is. So common, uncommon, rare. But there were a few other rebels here. We got Lawbringer, Lightbringer, Sky Shroud Poacher. Lawbringer and Lightbringer were a pair, were matching pairs. So matching pairs, what you find is they're in the same colour. Mirrored pairs are in different colours. There was something called a silken fist. So whenever one of these becomes blocked, they become untapped. Notably missing a rare creature to complete the cycle. So common, uncommon. Mercenaries. So in this particular set, they go beyond just the black cards. We've got Mercenary in blue, which we've seen before, that actually hunts out merfolk, recruits for merfolk, and Mogcatcher is a mercenary in red, which recruits for goblins. Not all of the mercenaries, as you can see, have that recruiting ability on them for other mercenaries, but some do. And there was yeah, like a Wrathy vertical cycle within this. So there's Wrathy Intimidator, Wrathy Fiend, and Wrathy Assassin. In fact, they are the only, yeah, they're the only black mercenaries that can recruit. Oh, Lacaliths. So we'll stick with the creatures here. You can also see there's a Lacalith enchantment. But, so we've got 2 common, 1 an uncommon, and 1 a rare for just the creatures. And what you'll notice is they're all red. And when they become blocked, you may have it deal damage equal to its power to target creature. If you do, the creature deals no combat damage that turn. The aura Lacalith Rig grants the ability to an enchanted creature. We've seen flowstones in earlier sets, and there are a number of flowstones here. Within the cards that have flowstone in their name, there are some non-creature spells, of which there is a vertical cycle. Flowstone Strike is the common. Flowstone Surge is the uncommon, that's an enchantment. And then Flowstone Slide is the rare, and that's a sorcery. And they grant the Flowstone ability, that's where you've got +1, -1. Although the Flowstone Slide has +X, -X. Of course, the creatures themselves have flowstone abilities on them as well. And you'll see a couple of artifacts here as well that have that flowstone thing going on. So I mentioned calling creatures. So these are in green, they're all in green. So there's a common, let's put that in order, common, around the other way. Yep, common, uncommon, rare. And the similarity here is you can see they all, well, I'll come to that one because that's a little bit different. So these two creatures search out copies of themselves. So you search your library up for 3 Sky Shroud Sentinel cards, reveal them, put them into your hand. Nesting Worm does it for Nesting Worm, but Pack Hunt, sorcery speed, it's not a creature. Search your library for up to 3 copies of target creature, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Now, if you remember when we did the Mycadian Mask set Musings, Howling Wolf did the same thing in there. That was a creature. So 2 creatures and a sorcery, just in case I was a little bit confusing there. Believe me, this set, despite being small, can be a little bit confusing. There's quite a bit going on in here, and it's not necessarily consistent. Legendaries, you know, I always like to have a look at the legendaries in the set. Lin Civi, Defiant Hero, Ascendant, Endvinkar, Volrath the Fallen, Predator Flagship. There was a legendary land, a couple of legendary lands, Corehaven, Wrath's Edge. This is interesting. So this is actually Krovax, but in order to not run into problems with the legend rule, it was just called Ascendant Evinkar, as opposed to having Krovax, Ascendant Evinkar in it. And that would avoid confusion on whether the legend rule came into effect when this could be potentially played with Krovax the Cursed. So that's how they sort of got it round there. Obviously, as we've moved through Magic, there's other ways that that's been dealt with over the years, which I won't necessarily go into. There's a little bit in the MTG Wiki article about that, actually, and as I always do, I'll include a link in the description to the MTG Wiki article, so you can see some of these very complicated cycles and various other things. Legendary lands. So particular interest here, I suppose, is this Corehaven, which was this mega cycle stretching over multiple blocks, which I think was then subsequently changed with the release of a later set, but I can't remember the set. It doesn't mention it in the actual article, but I know someone in the comment section has mentioned about that, and then I did a bit of research and found that several of these mega cycles have sometimes get messed around with after the fact, and then the story gets changed slightly by Wizards. So Voice of Truth was part of the Voice of mega cycle. So Voice of Truth, Nemesis, Voice of Reason was from Urza's Destiny, Voice of Grace, Urza's Saga, Voice of Law, Urza's Saga, and Voice of Duty, Urza's Destiny. So this is the one they sort of left out. And then Voice of All was released in Plane Shift, which has protection from a chosen colour. So that was released as like a homage, apparently, to this mega cycle. It's interesting, as most of the voices anyway are in the saga, in the Urza block. So let me bring up the set again. So as I've mentioned, a few pairs. So we've got Lawbringer and Lightbringer. And there was Stronghold Biologist and Stronghold Machinist. And then in the artifacts section, we had Rackling and Viseling. Mirrored pairs, Netta Endal and Bola Warrior, so 1/1 Spell Shapers, and Death Pit Offering and Overlaid Terrain, which are enchantments in black and green, are in there as well. So let's just scroll through now before we start to get on to the other ways I like to look at the cards in terms of prices and various other things when I reorganise the search here. Just going to see and just scroll through slowly and see what jumps out. Anything I've missed out. So, I'm looking out for sort of instant speed stuff. Okay, so can't attack or block. Oh yeah, we've seen most of these. It's interesting. Sorcery speed, remove target creature with the greatest power from the game. 2 and a white. Interesting. Voice of Truth. Where's our card draw? Accumulated knowledge. You got one of these cards where it cares about number of cards with the same name in this case in all graveyards. There's a few cards in Magic's history that actually do that. Look at cards that are in the graveyard with the same name. So messing with mana. It's interesting, we've got a few cards here that are flying that can only block creatures with flying. Is there a white one maybe? Not that I can necessarily see actually. Okay. What have we got in black? This Death Pit offering comes into play. Sacrifice all creatures you control. Creatures you control get +2/+2. Interesting. These assassin abilities are always really interesting. So yeah, I'm just looking at the seals because the seals seem to be the gateway to the removal, but it does give it away a bit, the fact that it's in play. Flowstone ability. It's really interesting that because it's sort of, it's this weird combination of pump spell and removal. Depending on how much mana you invest in it. Okay, so there's a mana ramp in green, no surprise there. It's interesting. This comes into play. Choose a creature type. 3 tap. Put a creature card of the chosen type from your hand into play. That would have been interesting in that. What's it? Rebel Tribal Commander Fodder episode. I mean, I'm sure there's better cards that do that, but it's just, you know, from terms of the set. So we've got quite a bit of interesting flexible utility going on in artifacts. Yeah, so in this particular set, what we notice is a lot of the utility is stapled to other cards through various activation shenanigans. Which I think is, one thing we've noticed in the set as a whole is with the presence of spell shapers, you've got this creature where a lot of the utility spells that you might normally see in a set are actually just stapled to the creature. And the other thing, of course, with the small set, it's going to rely on some of the instant and sorcery speed spells, which double up some of those effects, in terms of deck building. And we'll see a contrast in that when I do the Deck Durdle episode. The one where I use 6 packs of Nemesis and the one where I use 3 packs of Mercadian Mask, 3 packs of Nemesis, and the differences between the two in terms of how easy it is to include the appropriate level of utility. Right, let us just look at the price, because I know. There we go. So I'm going to just switch over, as I always do, to full view. Here we go. So most expensive card in the set is actually a Rebel card. Search your library for an Elf card and put that into play, then shuffle your library. It's only been printed once. Yeah, Elf Tribal, so hence the slightly higher side. High price. Tangle Wire. Each player's upkeep, that player taps and untaps. Control for each fade counter on Tangle Wire. Okay. Nemesis. It wasn't from the vault and turned up in the World Championship decks. Only printed in Nemesis. Okay, yeah, so Goblin Tutor, Goblin Recruiter, so that makes sense. Oh, Legendary Land, Core Haven, $11. Did crop up in the Zendikar Expeditions. Sea Hunter, yep. Merfolk Recruiter, so yep, again. Makes a lot of sense. We're seeing the recruiters high up the list in terms of prices. Now we drop below the $10 range. So it didn't take long for us to do that. And there's Parallax Wave. You can see also most of these have either cropped up in I'm trying to think what they even call this now. So you have this sort of list thing where they stick in certain historical cards into a special slot, insert some of the premium booster type products. So I think that's what that is. But we're seeing, most of these cards, if they've ever been reprinted, it's in some special format. It's not in a full set or part of a set. It's either a special card in a slot or some sort of seal product. Oh, here we go, Blinding Angel. That was it's been printed in a couple of core sets. What do you reckon? Yeah. So, in terms of cards that are popular in EDH, based on EDH ranking, we've got Sky Shroud, Claim, Terrain Generators, Seal of Cleansing, Core Haven, Tangle Wire, Fanatical Devotion, Submerge, Mog Salvage, Seal of Doom, Daze, Mog Catcher, Flame Rift. Just going to put this into full so we can just see how many times these, like where they've been reprinted, because it gives us a pretty good indicator of multiplayer appropriateness and where Wizards sort of place that in terms of the release schedules. So this did crop up in Battle Bond. That's been in some dual decks. I'm always interested in those that have been reprinted multiple times in the Commander product. That's just once and then ended up in Eternal Masters. Expeditions. So again, we're not seeing these being reprinted a ton. I don't know what statistically. Let's just look at the first one. That's quite a good indicator. Let me just go here so I can get in through here. Hmm. 39,818 decks. Mostly here. Yep, so it's going to be mono green mainly. Or, yeah, heavy green decks. Oh, Multani. We've been down that rabbit hole. That's an interesting commander. And then the final bit from the Magic side of things anyway. So, theme decks for the set. We've got green blue one, the breakdown deck, red white, eruption, laccolith and flowstone, mercenaries, mono black. I feel a mercenary episode of Commander Fodder coming on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I feel pulled towards that. And then black-green replicator deck. What's the rares there? Sapling burst. Sapling cluster. And as I've started doing now, and you've seen I've gone off a bit of a side track, which I should be creating more videos. There was a recent video I put up, I think it was called Music the Obsession, where I'm talking about it is going to be an ongoing series about music, one of my obsessions. And it started off with just I suppose a background episode. There's going to be more episodes about the well, lots of different things like particular bands that I got obsessed about. And also, I think I'm going to do several episodes about just music recommendation, like where, over the years, because as I started to get under the bonnet with that and think about, the causality, I suppose, of how I end up liking certain bands, I got really interested in where did I hear a band for the first time. And so what was originally going to be one episode has now morphed into multiples, because when I looked at the different ways you can get into music, I found that for a particular type of way, either on the radio or on TV, and I really thought about the stories behind that, which is what the episode's about. It's like the stories about how I've discovered certain music, certain bands and styles and genres and everything like that. There were lots of different stories within that particular discovery domain. So if I talk about the radio, then there's certain programs where they had a really critical impact on what I was, what I ended up listening to, or TV, or the music press, or going to gigs, or even like things like traveling. Like if you think of traveling, the amount of times that you discover new music when you're traveling, either at the airport you might buy something, or going on a road trip with people you don't necessarily know, they bring on a tape, that sort of thing. So all the stories surrounding that. And the reason why I bring this up in this episode is I've started doing this thing as well to hang, because at the time a lot of these sets came out, I was probably aware of magic, but I wasn't really aware of it. Like I'd seen it, I'd heard it in I think it was called Triumph of the Nerds, where one of I'm trying to think of who mentioned it, but someone actually mentions it as an aside in an episode of a series which was about the development of the PC. And that's, I think, when I first became aware of it. And then I sort of saw packs in various places, but didn't really bite it until a lot later, until 10th edition, I think. But because I've always been listening to music, I'm really curious as like, okay, if I had got into magic in that time, when would that have been? Like what was I listening to? So we're talking about what is like February 2000. So if we look at, I'm on the Wikipedia article here, just as a closing, what was coming out. So a lot of this stuff actually, I think I got into a little bit later. I remember this came out, which was the second album. I didn't start buying any of this stuff until they brought out some, wasn't really a compilation, but it was a box set, I think, of the first 2 or 3 albums. So that was a bit later. I'm just looking to see if there was anything that I would have bought around that time in 2000. I think 98 was when I started working for myself, so that first couple of years were a little bit lean, because a lot of my money was going back into the business to build it up. So I don't know how much stuff I was actually buying as it came out. Crikey. Although I recognise a lot of this stuff, I don't remember buying any of it as it came out. What the hell was I listening to? I don't think I even bought this when it came out. I bought it later, and I remember seeing that in record shops. I think I'd stopped listening to Overbite by this time. My guess is I was probably a little bit behind the curve here, thinking about what I might have been using as musical inspiration. We're talking, obviously well pre-music streaming, I think, or when I got into it, pre-Spotify. And it was pre my music blogging days. So I think most of the stuff that I recognise here I wouldn't have got into about a year or so later. So I was probably infilling through like Terrorizer end of year lists, which was a popular thing for me to do at that point actually. Let me just look at the previous close end of the year. I might recognise something a bit more around that time, and maybe I bought. Probably maybe that. Wow, I'm quite surprised actually at how much stuff here. If I did buy it, I didn't buy it till a little bit later. Huh. Yeah. Because I think the previous set had come out around here, hadn't it? So I was sort of flagging up a lot more. That's when I got into the discussion about melodic death metal, I think, which quite a few people picked up on. So I think if I looked at between that release, maybe. Yeah, see, bands like Rammstein I didn't get into a lot later. Oh, hang on, here's one. So I definitely bought this when it came out. That would have been in 1999, so the previous year, towards the tail end. So that came, yeah, so... Did I buy that? Maybe I did, yeah. So maybe at that time I was more in filling. I wasn't quite so ahead of the curve, which makes a lot of sense. I know I was a bit more selective in terms of what I was buying because I just started in business and money was a little bit tight. So I wasn't, going out and buying stuff as it came out. I think I'd wait until the end of the year and then look at the previous year's releases and then just decide what I was going to buy going forward. So yeah, that makes it's interesting for me anyway, just to see what I might have been listening to, and clearly whatever I was listening to was nothing recent at that point. Okay. So there we have it. And then let's get back to what we were originally talking about, which was Nemesis. Once again, thanks for watching. Bye for now.